The walls of Asamoah Correctional Center were tall, worn, and weathered by time. Barbed wires curled like angry vines atop the concrete fence, casting shadows over the dusty courtyard. The air inside was heavy, thick with silence, resentment, and memories that clung to the skin like sweat. But somewhere deep within those walls, a voice was waiting to rise. It belonged to Osaro Ighodaro. At 18, Osaro's life had spiraled into darkness. Born and raised in the bustling heart of Benin City, he had always felt the pulse of ambition beneath his chest. His mother, a petty trader, had struggled to raise him and his younger sister after their father died in a road accident. Osaro was smart, too smart, some said, but smartness without guidance is like fire without a hearth. By the time he was 16, Osaro had fallen into the wrong crowd. It started small, skipping school, joining street fights, running errands for older boys in the neighborhood. Then it escalated. One night, in the chaos of a street brawl that turned into a robbery gone wrong, Osaro was caught and arrested. Despite his protest that he hadn't wielded the weapon, he was sentenced to 4 years in a juvenile correctional facility. The news shattered his mother. His sister, Isiosa, cried for days. And Osaro, seated behind bars for the first time, felt his spirit break. The early months in Asamoah were brutal. Discipline was harsh, and hope was rare. Osaro kept to himself, speaking only when spoken to. He watched as other boys folded under pressure or lashed out in anger. He saw how some guards treated them not as children, but as criminals already lost to society. But everything changed one Monday morning when a soft-spoken woman named Miss Angela stepped into the center. She was a volunteer from a local NGO focused on rehabilitation through education and the arts. "I'm not here to change your past," she said that day, standing before the small gathering of boys. "I'm here because I believe your voice still matters." She introduced them to spoken word poetry, words as a form of healing, of protest, of truth. Most scoffed, but Osaro listened, and something stirred. That night, under the flickering light of the corridor bulb, Osaro picked up a scrap of paper and began to write. "I was born free, then chained by choices not wholly mine, a voice muffled by judgments before I could define." The words came pouring out, like a dam broken open. Each line carried pain, confusion, regret, and a longing for redemption. Over the next weeks, Osaro wrote poems, backs of worksheets, even torn bits of newspaper. Miss Angela noticed and began to mentor him. She gave him books, Achebe, Soyinka, Maya Angelou. She encouraged him to speak during weekly sessions. At first, he trembled, his voice cracked, but gradually, his confidence grew. Soon, he was standing tall, reciting verses that made even the toughest boys sit up and listen. Osaro's voice carried a rare kind of power, raw, honest, unfiltered. His poem "Behind These Walls" became a favorite. It wasn't just about prison. It was about society, about being labeled too soon, about how second chances were rare, but voices, if nurtured, could rebuild the broken. By the 3rd year of his sentence, Osaro was leading a group called the Resoundas, a circle of young inmates who used storytelling, music, and spoken word to process their past and imagine their future. Their performances, held for staff and occasional guests, started drawing attention from local officials and educators. Then came a life-changing opportunity. The Edo State Ministry of Youth Development partnered with an initiative called Voices Beyond Bars. It was a statewide competition for inmates in correctional centers to showcase their talents. Osaro's group qualified. He was chosen to represent Asamoah. He stood in the Grand Hall of the State Secretariat in front of judges, politicians, and journalists. Dressed in simple khaki trousers and a white shirt, he stepped up to the microphone. The room fell silent. He began, "I speak not to beg, but to be heard. From behind these walls, I launch my word. You see a convict, I see a boy misled, who found his voice in a place where dreams are said to be dead. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Tears glistened in Miss Angela's eyes. Even one of the sternest wardens nodded in approval. Osaro won the competition, but more importantly, his performance was posted online and went viral. People all over Nigeria watched in awe as this young man from Edo State, speaking with clarity and fire, challenged the way society viewed its lost youth. Upon release at 22, Osaro faced the world with uncertainty. But something had changed. He was no longer a forgotten boy behind bars. He was the voice that echoed beyond the walls. He was offered a scholarship by a local university to study English and literature. He accepted it with gratitude. During his studies, he published his first poetry collection, Echoes from Within. It was raw, powerful, and healing. He spoke at conferences, visited schools, and returned often to Asamoah Correctional Center, not as an inmate, but as a mentor. Osaro later founded a nonprofit called Edo Echoes, aimed at giving juvenile offenders access to education, therapy, and creative expression. He believed that no voice should be silenced just because it had stumbled. Years later, as he stood on the TEDx Benin stage, a confident man with kind eyes and a calm demeanor, he began his talk the same way he had in the state secretariat. "I speak not to beg, but to be heard." The crowd sat still, hanging on every word, because they knew Osaro Ighodaro's voice wasn't just his own. It was the voice of second chances, of redemption, of what's possible when someone sees beyond the walls and chooses to listen.